Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Onboard Story. I know it's been a while, but I've been away. I've decided to do the first story from Zandvoort, which was the Blancpain Sprint Series, also now known as the GT World Challenge Europe. And we're fighting in the Pro-Am category here, and starting here I think P12. And yeah, overall it was a pretty good weekend. We had some bad luck in the first race when we lost a wheel, but at this race number 2, I got to do the start, and with a group of really highly rated drivers, so I was pretty excited. Driving here through a bunch of dust from a crash in the GT4 race, and trying to pick a reliable line going into turn 1 without getting touched anywhere. I was quite nervous about an accident at the start. It happened in race 1, further around the first lap, so I was very aware of that, and there's cars everywhere. We're all jostling for position, but I actually made up 2 places in this tussle. Here going on the inside of the Aston, I can't remember who was driving the Aston, but now heading around the outside through this right-hander, and then it should be flat through the left, but on the first lap you just take it patient. I knew that he was still there, so I just had to give him as much space as I could, with but still being aggressive. So now I'm tucked in behind Marcello, the Mercedes factory driver, and the aim here wasn't actually to be super aggressive and overtake anyone. Those 2 places that I gained were a benefit, but at the end of the day we knew that this track to overtake is super high risk, so we had to do the overtaking in the pit stops or in the second phase of the race, where the bronze drivers get into the car, as in the amateur ranked drivers. They get into the car, and my co-driver Renat was the fastest amateur on the weekend by a considerable margin. So the aim was for me to consolidate my position here, not get into any trouble, and hand over the car to him and let him do all the hard work. So the pro is being lazy, but not really. Also, we started P2 in class, Pro-Am, and the leader of the Pro-Am, Jim Pla, he was 3 cars ahead of us. So in order to get the lead of Pro-Am, I would have had to make 3 or 4 high risk overtakes, and it just wasn't necessary. We had to stick to a strategy, hence the name of this video, playing the waiting game. So the key here is to just stay as close as I can to Jim, hope that he makes a mistake somewhere and that we can capitalize on it, or just keep out of trouble, bring the car into the pits. That all being said, circulating this track is unlike circulating any other track. There's nothing boring about driving around here. Just that section there, that bump, is actually super aggressive in real life, that no simulator does justice to be honest. I did play this for quite a few hours on the Assetto Corsa, the first version, on PlayStation, to prepare, because both myself and Renat had never been here before. And I learned quite a lot about the lines and the gears, but when I got there I didn't expect the bumps and the gradients to be as crazy as they were. So this track in real life is just super awesome, and I cannot believe I got to drive here before they do a massive revamp before the Formula 1. So trying to stay with Marcello as much as I can. Obviously I know who's in front of me. I don't want to lose time against him, just for the sake of my own ego. But you'll see that when we're in the slipstream with the Ferrari, we do tend to suffer from a bit of understeer. So this corner here should be flat, but I have to lift through there to avoid cooking the front tires. So we're just going to skip ahead a little bit, because I mostly just follow Marcello the whole way, but we do get to a point where it starts to drizzle a little bit that they didn't spot on the TV, and 1 or 2 drivers were making some mistakes. So starting a fresh lap here, the guys have pulled away a little bit in their group. I clearly was lacking a little bit of pace compared to these guys. In fact, the car that's sort of bunching up the 2 in front of me is Jim Clark, the leader in the Pro-Am. And here you can see a little bit of drizzle starting to appear on the windscreen. There's a saying in racing, you don't see the rain, you feel the rain, which is easier said than done when you're driving cars that are as expensive as these ones. You don't want to crash the car because someone has to pay for that. Luckily not me, but trust me, you'll be reminded of that incident for the rest of your life. So it's always about measuring the risk and reward when you're in this kind of racing. We're not with a factory team which can just throw budget at cars and everything, and also we're fighting for the championship here, so to win this race was actually super important, because the day before we were leading the race, and when I left the pits, our front right wheel came off, and we later discovered that it was a problem with the nut. It was no one's fault in particular, and the nut was actually fresh. It was just super unlucky. Here some guys, it's getting a little bit wetter here, and they just lost the rear. Me too. I had to balance it out, and the rain suddenly intensifies out of nowhere. This track the whole weekend was wet and dry, wet and dry. Our qualifying was very similar, and even though I was happy to have started close to the top 10 for a change, the truth is we actually had the pace for top 5, and we were in the top 5 during qualifying for the entire session, and then when I went for my last run, I was on for a lap for 3rd overall when I got blocked in the last corner and had to brake. And you can see on the data I basically go from 150 kph to 0 kph to avoid the car that was blocking me. That car actually ended up getting pole position overall, and we started down in P12 and 2nd in class. So that was a little bit frustrating, if I'm honest, but that's how racing goes. So yeah, this track overall, I mean, in the simulator, going through here, it's reasonably fun, but when you go through there in real life, it feels like you are a world champion. It's just one of the best feelings is going through that corner. Going back to the wheel situation, so I went through that fast right hand, I think it's turn 7, and I could feel the wheel coming off, so luckily I slowed before anything major happened, and I went wide into the gravel, but didn't spin or anything, managed to keep it going, boxed for a new tire, and eventually just finished the race. We managed to collect a little bit of points, but our championship competitors ended up winning the race, and we finished 5th. So we lost a massive chunk to them in the title fight, and we had to do whatever we could in this race to try and pull that back, and that meant that we had to win. So that's why trying to risk anything was unnecessary, because if we didn't get a result here, our championship would have been over, and that would have just been a travesty, because we've led every single race this year in the Pro-Am series, and up until this point had only managed to win one of them, and we've had a few podiums, but we've also had unlucky situations put us out of winning contention, which has been super frustrating. So now currently we are still 2nd in the championship, but we're only 10 points behind, and there's 4 races to go. We have Nürburgring and Budapest as a back-to-back, and those are the final 2 rounds of the GT World Challenge, the Sprint Cup. So we need to get a good result there as well if we want to try to win this thing. We're in contention, so we're P2, we have to be realistic, and really looking forward to the next 2 races. But coming back to Zandvoort, as you can see, I've closed up a little bit here. I think it's just because some of the guys in front are going through not a grading phase, but just a slow phase of the race. My tires tend to come in much later. That's generally the setup that we run at Rinaldi, just we wait for the tires to come in. And then we can see here Marcello's looking for a move down the inside, but the Audi blocks him. I think that's a WRT Audi. And they start to have a bit of a battle. I was thinking, like, where can I go? How can I overtake these 2 guys? But to be honest with you, there's just no space around here. So I was thinking, okay, maybe one of them's going to run wide, especially this corner here, touch the grass, and then I'll get a run down to turn 1. But it wasn't to be. So here I'm stuck behind them, and now the aim is to hope that they pit earlier than us, so that I can get some clean laps without any traffic, and try and perform an undercut to the Pro-Am car ahead of us. That's the blue Mercedes. You can just see him through the windscreen there. He's 2 cars ahead. He did a really good qualifying lap. He's been on pole, I think, every single race this year. So good job to Jim. But let's cut ahead to some clear laps, and we'll just run in silence for a bit until the pit stops, and then chat through the final phase of the race. Okay, so now we can see Marcello is boxing, which gives me some free space. Just ahead of me is Pla in the Mercedes, so he's also staying out, and that's because during these races, when the pro is in the car, we extend our stints to the maximum possible time. So just to the end of the pit window in the GT World Challenge, you get there's a 10-minute pit window that you have to box in between. So you can either box at the very beginning of it, or you can stretch it out. It just opens up a little bit of strategy, which forces a pit stop, and also enables the officials to bring in a maximum and minimum driving time, so that one driver doesn't do 55 minutes of the race and the other guy does 5 minutes. So this is specifically useful in the Pro-Am series, because the AM drivers also need to get a chance, and they need to be sort of forced to drive, because there are AMs out there who will do the least amount of driving possible. I know of guys who have done 1 hour in a 24-hour race and paid for the whole thing just so they can get the trophy. So that's how customer racing works, that's how GT racing works. But anyway, now we are out on our own and have to make sure that we try and get as many laps below 1 minute 40 as possible, and just hope to try and either close the gap to Jim or at least pull away from the Pro-Am guys behind me, who are also going to be staying out, because in race 2 the pros have to start and the amateurs have to drive second. So now it's all the pros together. If one of us boxed before the other and put our AM in the car, we'd absolutely lose time, relatively speaking. However, we had a little secret up our sleeve, and that was Renat had a new set of tires that we'd saved for this second stint, and when he's on a new set of tires, he tends to match my pace on used tires, and that's been a huge benefit to us in recent past. So knowing that he has the new set gives me some confidence that maybe we can box 1 lap earlier than the others. We're also really quick in the pit stops compared to the other guys, so we tend to avoid any issues there, even though in the Pro-Am category there is a minimum pit stop time. So for the pros, this is very important, for the pros, they can do a box, and then as fast as the driver change and tire change takes is as long as they stay in the pits. Whereas with us, we have to stay an extra 10 seconds longer, and that gives some of the older AM drivers some time to buckle up safely before heading out the pits. However, Renat and I are the same age, and we're super fast in the pit stops. We can do a driver change in less than 20 seconds. That's all unbelted, get out the car, next driver gets in, then he belts up. So for us, we wish that there was no minimum pit stop time, because we know for sure we'd have a competitive advantage there, but it's a new rule for this year. The commentators often fail to mention it, but that's how it goes. Okay, so now we enter the pit lane. Because we have a minimum pit stop time, there's no point to attack the pit line, because then you'll get a massive penalty if you go in over the speed limit, and you're going to get a drive through. So we'll always leave a little bit of margin in the race to break on the line. Here is how a pit stop goes. We stop, unbuckle, have to move the belts in a specific order to get them out the way, so that the next driver who gets in doesn't have to search for the belts when they get in. They just know exactly where they are and then clip them in. You first do bottom right, then you do top right. Renat's super fast with these things, and I just stand there and help him with the top left belt to make sure that it's all clipped in. Meanwhile, the guys are doing the tire changes. We have a countdown timer on our dashboard, and once the car drops, it automatically starts. We have a launch button, and you can see there the AM car of the Jim Pla car, who just got out ahead of us, and that's just, we have, because of the minimum pit stop time, there is no opportunity for us to make up any time in the driver change, unfortunately, because we would have made up some time there. Anyway, so here's Renat. His job is now to catch the guy ahead. I think his name is Maro Ricky. I do stand to be corrected. He is new, relatively new to the series, and this is also his first time around this track. So you'll see here that Renat catches him much quicker than we ever anticipated. And before you know it, while the other Pro-Am car is trying to just get up to speed, Renat is already on fire. He was super focused, obviously upset about the day before, and goes for a pretty awesome move down the inside here, which is not really an overtaking move area, to be honest. And before you know it, we got into the lead, and Renat proceeds to pull away and put in some pretty incredible times for an amateur driver on these tires. So at one point he was one of the top 5 quickest against the best GT drivers in the world and people who've driven here many times before. So maximum credit to Renat for this stint. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Next 2 races is Nürburgring and Budapest, starting at the end of August. Thank you again to all my Patreon subscribers. You can become a patron as well, patreon.com/David Perel. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will catch you around the next lap. Cheers.